Today, we continue our journey to the West Saga with Episode 18, The Monastery of Silent Bells. After their triumph at Weeping Peak, Tang Sanzang and his disciples encounter a mysterious monastery where sound itself can tear open gateways between worlds. When 17 sacred bells are stolen by a demon intent on creating chaos, our heroes must navigate crystal caverns in complete silence to recover them. Watch as Monkey King's cleverness, Sha Wu Jing's strength, and even Ba Jie's wisdom shine in this test of harmony versus discord. If you've been enjoying our journey westward, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, though perhaps more quietly after watching this episode. Let's dive into another extraordinary chapter of this legendary pilgrimage. As the pilgrims journeyed further westward, the transformed silhouette of Weeping Peak gradually disappeared behind them. The mountain, once shrouded in perpetual mist and sorrow, now stood clear against the sky like a Buddha in meditation, a testament to their victory over the sorrow-monger demon. Tang Sanzang rode in contemplative silence upon his white horse. The soul flowers they had gathered in the Valley of Forgotten Souls had served their purpose well, bringing liberation to countless trapped spirits. Yet the monk couldn't help but wonder what other challenges awaited them on their sacred quest for the scriptures. "Master," Wukong called, landing gracefully beside the traveling party after one of his cloud scouting expeditions. There's a vast forest ahead, stretching for miles. Beyond it lies a mountain range with what appears to be a monastery near its base. A monastery? Tang Sanzang's expression brightened. Perhaps we can find shelter there for the night and seek guidance from fellow devotees of Buddha. Ba Jie, who had been trudging along with his 9-toothed rake slung over one shoulder, perked up at this news. "With any luck, they'll have a proper kitchen. I've been dreaming of a feast since we left that gloomy village." "Your stomach thinks more than your head," Wukong teased, flipping in the air. Sha Wujing adjusted the burden on his shoulders and spoke in his characteristically measured tone. "We should remain vigilant. Not all who claim to serve Buddha are true to their vows." Tang Sanzang nodded. "Wise counsel, Wujing. We shall approach with open hearts but clear eyes." As they entered the forest, the atmosphere changed subtly. The trees grew increasingly dense, their ancient trunks wider than 10 men with arms outstretched. Shafts of golden sunlight pierced through the canopy, illuminating a floor carpeted with unusual flowers, bell-shaped blossoms in hues of white and pale purple that seemed to bow slightly when the travelers passed. "These flowers are most unusual," Tang Sanzang observed, leaning down from his horse to examine them. "I've never encountered their like in any of my botanical studies." Wukong sniffed the air suspiciously. "There's magic here, but its nature eludes me. It doesn't feel malevolent, just strange." As they ventured deeper into the forest, the travelers noticed something peculiar. The forest had grown utterly silent. No bird sang, no insects chirped, not even the sound of wind rustling leaves could be heard. Their footfalls and voices seemed strangely muted, as though the air itself absorbed sound. "This silence is unnatural," Sha Wujing whispered, his deep voice barely carrying despite the stillness. Ba Jie clutched his rake nervously. "I don't like this. Forests should be noisy with life." "Remain calm," Tang Sanzang counseled his disciples. "Not everything unusual is necessarily evil. Let us continue with mindfulness. By late afternoon, they emerged from the forest into a broad valley. Before them loomed the mountain range Wukong had described, and at its base stood an impressive monastery. Unlike the typical temples they had encountered, this structure was built entirely of a translucent stone that captured and refracted the sunlight, creating prismatic patterns across its surface. Instead of the usual vibrant colors of temple architecture, this monastery was adorned in shades of white, silver, and the palest blue. Most striking of all was the complete absence of bells. Every Buddhist monastery they had encountered featured bell towers, the resonant tones marking the hours of prayer and meditation. Yet here, despite the impressive size of the complex, not a single bell was visible. As they approached the main gate, they found it standing open. No monks bustled about the courtyards, no acolytes tended the gardens. The silence that had pervaded the forest extended to this sacred space. "Hello," Tang Sanzang called out, his voice strangely dampened. "Is anyone here? Pilgrims seek shelter for the night." For a long moment there was no response. Then a figure emerged from the main hall, an elderly monk with a serene face and eyes that reflected the same translucent quality as the monastery's stones. He wore robes of shimmering white rather than the traditional saffron. The elderly monk pressed his palms together in greeting, but did not speak. Instead, his hands began to move in a series of graceful gestures. "He's using hand signs," Tang Sanzang realized, watching carefully. "This must be a monastery devoted to silent contemplation." The monk nodded, seeming pleased that Tang Sanzang understood. Wukong stepped forward impatiently. "Well, what's he saying? Some of us didn't study fancy finger-talking." Tang Sanzang interpreted the elderly monk's gestures. "He welcomes us to the Monastery of Silent Bells and offers shelter for as long as we wish to stay." The elderly monk beckoned them to follow him into the main courtyard. There they encountered several other monks, all moving with deliberate grace and communicating through the same system of hand signs. The pilgrims were led to guest quarters, simple but comfortable rooms surrounding a small meditation garden. Once they had settled in, the elderly monk, who had introduced himself through signs as Abbot Vaishravana, invited Tang Sanzang to join him for tea, while the disciples refreshed themselves after their journey. In a small, austere chamber lit by crystalline lamps, Tang Sanzang and the abbot knelt facing each other across a low table. The abbot poured tea with ritualistic precision, the steam rising in elaborate patterns that seemed almost deliberately shaped. "Venerable abbot," Tang Sanzang began, keeping his voice appropriately hushed, "may I ask why your monastery observes such strict silence? And why is it called the Monastery of Silent Bells when I see no bells at all?" The abbot's hands moved in elaborate patterns, which Tang Sanzang did his best to follow. "He says," Tang Sanzang later explained to his disciples, "that this monastery was founded 500 years ago by a monk who discovered that certain sounds, particularly the pure tones of properly cast bells, could open doorways between our world and others." "Doorways?" Baji interrupted, his small eyes widening. "Like heavenly portals?" "Not just to heaven," Tang Sanzang continued, "but to many realms, some benevolent, others decidedly not. The founding monk learned that demons from one particularly chaotic realm We're using the resonance of temple bells throughout the land to slip into our world. Wukong twirled his staff thoughtfully. That explains a few things I've witnessed over the centuries. The founder established this monastery to study these sound-sensitive gateways, Tang Sanzang went on. They discovered that absolute silence could seal the problematic portals, but certain harmonic tones could open beneficial ones. They crafted special bells designed to create only these beneficial harmonics. And where are these special bells now? Sha Wujing asked. Tang Sanzang's expression grew troubled. That's where our host's tale takes a dark turn. 3 months ago, a strange traveler came to the monastery, a musician carrying an unusual stringed instrument. He requested shelter for the night, which the monks granted. Let me guess, Wukong said. This musician wasn't what he appeared to be. Tang Sanzang nodded. During the night, he stole all 17 of their sacred bells and vanished. Without these bells, the monks fear practicing even their specialized harmonic chants, lest uncontrolled portals open. They've maintained complete silence since the theft. They believe this thief was actually a demon disguised as a human, Tang Sanzang continued, one who specifically targeted their bells to create chaos by opening unstable portals between realms. Baji sighed heavily. Let me guess again. Our journey west now requires a detour to recover these bells? The abbot has made no such request, Tang Sanzang replied serenely. He merely shared their situation when I inquired about the monastery's name. But you feel compelled to help them anyway, Wukong observed, a knowing grin spreading across his simian features. Tang Sanzang smiled gently. Our path to enlightenment includes compassionate action when we encounter suffering, does it not? So, where do we start looking for these bells? Sha Wujing asked practically. The abbot believes the thief fled to the crystal caverns in the mountains above the monastery, Tang Sanzang explained. The monks haven't pursued him because, without their bells or chants to protect them, they fear what portals might open in their presence. Wukong jumped to his feet. Well then, a quick trip to these caverns, a sound thrashing for this bell thief, and we'll be back in time for dinner. Tang Sanzang raised a cautioning hand. Not so hastily, Wukong. The abbot warns that these crystal caverns naturally amplify sound. Even the slightest noise echoes and grows within them. If the bells are rung improperly there, the consequences could be disastrous. So we need a silent approach, Sha Wujing mused. Stealth rather than direct confrontation. Precisely, Tang Sanzang agreed. The abbot has provided a map to the caverns and diagrams of the bells. We must recover them intact and without causing them to ring. Baji groaned. Silent sneaking through treacherous caves to steal from a demon without making a sound? This seems ill-suited to my particular talents. Perhaps you could guard the entrance, Wukong suggested with a mischievous twinkle in his golden eyes. As twilight descended, the pilgrims prepared for their mission. The abbot provided them with soft-soled shoes and garments, made of a special silk that absorbed rather than reflected sound. He also gave Tang Sanzang a small crystal pendant, a miniature replica of one of the sacred bells. This will help us locate the real bells, Tang Sanzang explained to his disciples. It resonates sympathetically when near its larger counterparts. The mountain path was bathed in moonlight as they began their ascent. Unusual rock formations jutted from the mountainside like frozen waves, their surfaces glittering with embedded crystals that caught and multiplied the lunar glow. "Beautiful, but treacherous," Sha Wujing observed as they carefully navigated the increasingly steep trail. "One misstep on these crystals could send us sliding down the mountain." True to his nature, Wukong scouted ahead, moving with the silent agility that had earned him his reputation in the mountain of flowers and fruit. He returned periodically to guide the others through particularly challenging sections. After 2 hours of climbing, they reached the entrance to the crystal caverns, a towering archway lined with transparent crystal columns that seemed to sing faintly when the night breeze passed through them. "Remember," Tang Sanzang whispered so softly his disciples could barely hear him, "absolute silence from this point forward. One wrong sound could alert the thief, or worse, inadvertently open a portal we cannot control." Baji, as agreed, remained at the entrance, both to guard their exit and because his less than graceful movements posed the greatest risk inside. Wukong, Tang Sanzang, and Sha Wujing proceeded into the caverns, communicating only through hand gestures similar to those used by the monastery's monks. The interior of the caverns defied description. Vast chambers opened one into another, their walls, floors, and ceilings completely lined with crystals of various sizes and hues. The limited light they carried, a single covered lantern, reflected and refracted until the entire space seemed to glow from within. Tang Sanzang held the crystal pendant before him like a compass. As they ventured deeper, it began to emit a faint luminescence, growing brighter when they took certain passages and dimmer when they chose others. In the heart of the mountain, they discovered a central chamber greater than all the others. Here, the crystals formed natural terraces rising to a central platform, and there, arranged in a perfect circle, hung the 17 sacred bells. Each bell was crafted from the same translucent stone as the monastery, inlaid with symbols representing different realms of existence. They hung suspended from crystal frames, not touching each other, but positioned precisely to create specific, harmonic relationships. Standing before them, plucking contemplatively at a strange stringed instrument, was a figure that could only be the thief. From a distance, he appeared human, a slender musician with long fingers and flowing robes. But as the pilgrims watched from their hidden vantage point, his form occasionally rippled, revealing glimpses of his true nature: scaled skin, elongated limbs with too many joints, and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Wukong pointed to himself, then to the ceiling above the demon, indicating his plan to position himself for an ambush. Tang Sanzang nodded approval, but held up a cautioning hand, reminding him that stealth remained essential. With incredible agility, Wukong scaled the crystal walls, moving from one handhold to another without making so much as a scrape of sound. Sha Wujing, meanwhile, circled around to approach from the opposite side of the chamber, his river-dwelling past giving him exceptional skill at moving silently despite his size. Tang Sanzang remained where he was, clutching the pendant and focusing his spiritual energy. The abbot had shown him how the pendant could be used not just to locate the bells, but to temporarily dampen their ability to ring, a precaution necessary for safe transport back to the monastery. The demon musician suddenly stopped playing and cocked his head, as though sensing something amiss. He turned slowly, scanning the chamber with eyes that now definitely glowed with an unnatural light. "I know you're here," he said, his voice strangely melodious even in its menace. "The silent monks were too cowardly to come themselves, so they've sent proxies." Tang Sanzang remained perfectly still, continuing to channel energy into the pendant. He needed only a few more moments. The demon plucked a dissonant chord on his instrument. "Perhaps I should demonstrate why I took these bells. The monks use them so conservatively. Imagine the chaos when all 17 sound at once, opening every possible doorway between realms." He reached for the nearest bell, but in that instant, 3 things happened simultaneously. Wukong dropped from the ceiling, his staff extending. Sha Wujing emerged from behind a crystal formation with his monk spade at the ready. And Tang Sanzang completed his spiritual working with the pendant, which released a pulse of silent energy that swept through the chamber. The demon's hand closed around the bell, but when he swung it, no sound emerged. His expression of triumphant malice transformed to confusion. "Looking for this?" Wukong taunted, revealing that he had somehow switched places with the bell in that fraction of a second, leaving the demon holding nothing but air while Wukong now balanced the actual bell on the tip of his staff. The demon snarled, abandoning all pretense of humanity. His form shifted fully to reveal a creature with the upper body of a man but the lower body and head of a locust, a tongue cricket demon, known for creating destructive harmonics with its natural singing. "You've silenced my bells, but not me," the demon chittered, drawing breath for what would surely be a devastating sonic attack. Sha Wujing moved with surprising speed, closing the distance and swinging his weapon not at the demon, but at the crystal formation directly above it. The blow was perfectly calculated, not enough to shatter the crystal, but enough to dislodge a section that fell squarely onto the demon's head, momentarily stunning it. In that instant of disorientation, Wukong pounced, producing a length of special cord given to them by the abbot, cord woven with the same sound-dampening silk as their garments. With lightning speed, he bound the demon's mouth shut and secured its limbs. "Masterfully done," Tang Sanzang finally spoke, though still in the barest whisper. "Now we must secure the bells for transport." Working quickly and with extreme care, they wrapped each bell in protective cloth and placed them in the special carrying cases the abbot had provided. Throughout the process, the bound demon watched with hatred burning in its compound eyes. Once the bells were secured, Tang Sanzang approached the demon, his expression compassionate despite the creature's malevolent intent. "You sought to create chaos for its own sake," he observed quietly, "but harmony will always overcome discord in the end." With a series of precise gestures learned from the abbot, Tang Sanzang placed his fingers on specific points of the demon's transformed body. The creature's struggles gradually ceased as a peaceful expression overtook its features. "What did you do to him, master?" Sha Wujing asked as they prepared to depart. "A temporary alignment of his spiritual energies," Tang Sanzang explained. "When he awakens, he'll have an opportunity to choose a different path. The compulsion toward chaos will be lessened, though not eliminated. Free will must always be preserved." They made their way back through the crystal caverns with their precious cargo, rejoining a relieved Baji at the entrance. The descent proved easier than the climb, and they returned to the monastery of Silent Bells just as dawn broke over the eastern horizon. The monks received the bells with visible joy, their hands moving in elaborate gestures of gratitude. The abbot invited them to witness the reinstallation ceremony, which would take place at midday when the sun's position would amplify the bell's beneficial properties. After resting through the morning, the pilgrims gathered with the monastery's inhabitants in the main courtyard. There, 17 crystal pedestals had been arranged in a pattern that Tang Sanzang recognized as a symbolic representation of the 17 realms of existence. One by one, the monks reverently placed each bell on its designated pedestal. As the final bell was positioned, a shaft of midday sunlight struck the arrangement perfectly, sending prismatic light dancing through each translucent instrument. For the first time since their arrival, the pilgrims heard the monks raise their voices, not in speech, but in a carefully constructed chant that matched the natural frequency of the crystal bells. Though no one touched them, the bells began to vibrate in response, producing tones of such purity and complexity that the pilgrims felt the sound not just in their ears, but throughout their entire beings. The overlapping harmonics created patterns in the air, visible ripples that coalesced into a shimmering portal directly above the bell arrangement. Unlike the chaotic gateways the demon had intended to create, this portal radiated peace and wisdom. Through it, they glimpsed a realm of extraordinary beauty where beings of light moved in perfect harmony. The chant concluded, and the portal gently closed, leaving behind a lingering sense of connection to something greater than themselves. The abbot approached Tang Sanzang, his hands moving in explanation. He says this particular gateway opens to a realm where pure sound takes physical form, Tang Sanzang translated for his disciples. The monks commune with its inhabitants to learn new harmonics that can heal and enlighten. Will they resume their normal practices now that the bells are returned? Sha Wu-jing asked. After consulting with the abbot, Tang Sanzang nodded. Yes, though with additional precautions. They've learned from this experience that their knowledge must be better protected. As the pilgrims prepared to resume their journey the following morning, the abbot presented Tang Sanzang with a gift, a small crystal bell similar to the pendant he had used, but with additional symbols etched into its surface. He says it will help us perceive deception, Tang Sanzang explained to his disciples. When falsehood is spoken in its presence, the bell will vibrate slightly, not enough to create a portal, but enough to warn us. That will certainly prove useful on our journey, Wukong remarked, eyeing the bell with appreciation. They departed the monastery of Silent Bells with renewed purpose, the forest around them no longer unnaturally quiet. Birdsong had returned, along with the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze, ordinary sounds that now seemed precious after their experience with absolute silence. You know, Bajie observed as they reached the forest's edge and looked back at the gleaming monastery, I've been thinking about those portal-opening bells and what they represent. A dangerous pastime for you, Wukong quipped reflexively, though without his usual bite. Bajie continued undeterred. Everything in existence has its vibration, its natural tone. Perhaps enlightenment is simply finding the perfect harmony between our inner nature and the cosmos around us. Tang Sanzang regarded his disciple with pleasant surprise. A most insightful observation, Baji. Indeed, the path to enlightenment might well be described as tuning the instrument of our being until it resonates perfectly with Buddha nature. As they turned westward once more, the crystal bell hanging from Tang Sanzang's sash caught the morning light, sending brief rainbows dancing across their path. Silent reminders of the connections between all realms of existence and the music that bound them together in the great symphony of creation. And that's the end of episode 18. Our pilgrims have once again overcome supernatural challenges, this time learning that sometimes the greatest power comes not from confrontation, but from perfect harmony and silence. What new obstacles await Tang Sanzang and his disciples on their sacred quest? The journey westward continues with even more demons, divine interventions, and spiritual lessons ahead. To follow the complete journey to the West Saga, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new chapter. Here at Celestial Scrolls, we're dedicated to bringing these ancient tales to life for you each week. Thank you for joining us on this mystical adventure through the Monastery of Silent Bells. Until next time, may your own journey be filled with wisdom and harmony.